This video is sponsored by Brian Kim. Follow him at StandByBrian on Twitter, Instagram, Twitch, and TikTok. Thanks, Brian. Stay tuned for more Brian after the video. One of the basic situationist practices is the derive, literally drifting, a technique of rapid passage through varied ambiances. Derives involve playful constructive behavior and awareness of psychogeographical effects, and are thus quite different from the classic notions of journey or stroll. In a derive, one or more persons during a certain period drop their relations, their work and leisure activities, and all their other usual motives for movement and action, and let themselves be drawn by the attractions of the terrain and the encounters they find there. Guy Debord's, 1958. It's meaningful when I can trace exactly how a game has changed my real-life behavior. The first time I played 2019's A Short Hike, I felt compelled to review it on From the Intercom, the Asian American media website I write for. In that article, I mentioned French Marxist theorist Guy Debord's concept of the derive, an idea I was first introduced to in university. Today I wanted to expand on that and how A Short Hike and the derive refreshed my life.
Active in the Situationists had two techniques that they believed were keys to changing the world. These were very tiny, almost paltry techniques. One was the derive, which means the drift. And that meant people wandering through cities, being simply pulled by the attractions that you could find in a city, or repulsed by things that were ugly and hateful. Simply letting the city itself, its streets, its buildings, its ambiance, its mini-climates, guide you, draw you down, making you see the city that you lived in an utterly new way. This was a way of discovering utopia, of discovering what you hated, what you loved.
The derive suggests an unprejudiced type of movement through space. It's outside the realm of work or leisure, but is instead concerned with what is interesting, noticeable, and specific about any given place. This framework opens up so many questions of what and who a place serves. What do people do at a bus stop? How can a park be oppressive? What are the affordances and limits of places?
There's a squirrel that is eating on top of this tree, and it's dropping a bunch of stuff all over us. This will never happen to you indoors. You're right there. Is he like throwing them? Let's go, there he goes.
Where do people gather, pause, disperse, when, where, how, and why? It's one of those concepts that might be difficult to turn off once you've recognized it, but I've found it to be very useful in describing how I feel in the physical world. In simple terms, I'd associate the derive with walking, a consistent pastime of mine that I struggled to build over the pandemic. Excluding all the obvious physical and mental health benefits of walking, I was in a headspace that saw it as pretty pointless and not useful to creative goals in life I wanted to accomplish. I felt that it was all easier said than done. All journey, no destination, no thanks. Why was I feeling this way, and how did my behavior dramatically change? Here's how A Short Hike helped me understand the derive and explore the world again. A Short Hike is an exploration game the size of a novella. The game was designed by Adam Robinson Yu, who, when working on a completely different game, had decided to produce A Short Hike because the idea felt small and achievable. In the game, you play as Claire, a young adult bird who is spending the summer at Hawk Peak Provincial Park and can only get cell phone reception at the summit of Hawk Peak. While there is a quote-unquote goal, the real reward is discovering the nooks and crannies of A Short Hike's snow globe universe. A Short Hike does three things exceptionally well. It invites the player in, sparks curiosity, and rewards exploration. As you meander the world, you'll run into characters that share stories, desires, and info with you about Hawk Peak. You'll acquire a variety of items that grant you more access to the park, namely golden feathers that boost your stamina while running, climbing, and flying. I felt encouraged to deviate from every path. I took zigzags instead of straight lines. I promised myself I would find my way back, but always allowed myself opportunities to wander just a little farther. The environment felt warm, comforting, safe, exciting, and also aimless that transformed into an overall feeling of liberation. I grew up in the suburbs that are notoriously unwalkable. If you're lucky, there will be a park with unnatural trees or a supermarket less than 3 miles away from you. If you're unlucky, it's just miles of the same looking houses, lawns, cars, mailboxes. When it's too cold or too hot, outside is the last place you would want to be. The mall might provide respite, but the exploration it encourages you to do is to buy and consume. Plus, you would need a car to get there, which is gated by age, class, and ultimately antithetical to exploration, since you'll have to follow pre-built roads and highways. These are hardly the elements that would make a person want to be part of their living, breathing world. For more substantive critique on the suburbs, I highly recommend this video by Gecko about how the suburbs are killing us. It reflects a lot of my own opinions having grown up there. When I moved to the city, I didn't have a lot of experience walking for recreation or plain curiosity. It took time to realize a grocery store was only 3 blocks away, or that I could go to a local barber for a haircut or jog downtown. The city didn't solve all accessibility problems, but I started to become more curious, and there was just enough for me to start making small, meaningful steps. When I finished a short hike for the first time, I flew down the mountain and got very emotional because I was looking down at all the places I had been, all the routes I took, all the loose threads that I hadn't been tied up yet. I felt I had lived in this world and become a part of its language. I could do something small. I was allowed to get distracted. It was okay because I still overcame many obstacles to get here. I was able to experience the derive in the game before I could practice it in real life. Unfortunately, in America, it is very difficult to practice the derive on a daily basis. It not only feels discouraged or unsupported, but it feels actively repressed at some times. How are you supposed to go walking when in the middle of that walk there's 2 freeway overpasses or a McDonald's and a Starbucks that are trying to get you in their doors? The derive is premised on being curious and being explorative of your space, but what if you don't feel safe? What if it's not walkable? What if you have a disability and you aren't able to access the same things that able-bodied folks aren't able to do? There's so many obstacles in the way of this that it only makes sense that people wouldn't be prepared to seek out this way of thinking, the practice of derive on a daily basis. There are people that want to do something like this but don't have the language to do it, and the derive actually provides a couple of different steps to approach that in your daily life. It's still difficult. Sometimes it feels impossible, but it is possible. And I think that playing games like a short hike or reading certain books or consuming certain media can be steps that invite you there. It isn't without its own critique, but being able to zoom in on these concepts, I think is super important and definitely helped me in my day-to-day life for sure. Perhaps unintentionally, a short hike is the perfect festival for the derive. The game's visuals and landscape were inspired by the Canadian Shield in autumn. Adam Robinson used limited art skills created the crunchy textures of the game. Mark Sparling's adaptive score soars, swells, breathes, and whistles, capitalizing on the freedom that open-world games entail. How could you not want to seek out these components in your own life? So this video took a while to produce because I was generally distracted and fascinated by life. That's the derive. In the time I spent ideating on this script, I learned how to solve a Rubik's Cube. Right here, not this one, obviously. I GM'd my first tabletop role-playing game. I went to the beach. I took several road trips, watched like 5 films, and I walked nearly 50 kilometers. For me, the creative process is only worth doing if rest and curiosity is factored in. It's difficult to be always fully honest in your work, but be gentle and generous when you're doing it. When so much of life is dictated by profits and deadlines and performance, it's even more important to let yourself get lost and humbled by the world around you. So that being said, spend some time doing other things. Make a new game. Dig for buried treasure. Take a rental boat out for a spin. Call your mom. Fly down the mountain. That's a derive. That's a short hike. That's life. Enjoy it. I'd like to take this time and thank our sponsor for this video, Brian Kim, otherwise known as Stand By Brian. Stand By Brian is the hottest new mobile game. Stand By Brian will protect your internet privacy. Stand By Brian will give you the best sleep of your life. Stand By Brian is lightweight and great for date night or casual wear. Stand By Brian is your friend. For real though, Brian is a real one. He's been an active supporter of my creative work for almost 10 years now. He's an excellent video editor, sound mixer, and friend. Follow Brian Kim on his content journey at Stand By Brian on Twitter, Twitch, TikTok, and Instagram. There's a lot of dope stuff planned, so can't wait to see it. Can't wait for you to see it. Thanks for supporting the videos. And that's it. Finally done. A short hike. Thank you. Bye-bye.